Thank you very much, Sean. Thank you very much, everyone, and welcome to another session of our RM Smart Investing classes. I'm so pleased to have you. This week, I'd like to change the subject again from the strategies and review something that unfortunately is becoming it's kind of more of an art and science and a habit, and that's like reading books. And with all the things electronics, with the YouTubes and being so visual and having such a short attention span, I still think there's a lot of joys in reading books. And what I decided to do, I want to share some of my favorite trading books that I read and reread. And every time I read these books, I get something different out of it. And basically, it is something that I encourage everyone to do. I try to read, and nowadays with the Audible, and you can actually listen to these, and then of course used to be CDs. It's also enjoyable to when I'm walking around, I listen to a book. I try to finish a book a week, and it's been a habit, and I really enjoy it. One of the things with with all these YouTubes and everything, I think it's good that we get to the points, but it takes the joy of the totality. It's almost like watching a movie. Let's say if you are a big fan of Lord of the Rings, or you're Harry Potter, or Star Wars, or Gone with the Wind, or Citizen Kane, it's very difficult to just watch like 2 minutes or 5 minutes of it. It's really good to have the enjoyment of reading a book from beginning to end in a way that it's not only enjoyable but also helpful. And that's what one of my criteria of choosing my books was: which ones are really they are very productive, they are enjoyable to read. Unfortunately, there's a lot of books are out there which are full of fluff. I mean, the author can uh, write that book in 5 pages, and yet they extend it to 300 pages. So what I'm going to share with you is the books that I feel they do have content, and they are going to be very useful. Once you go to Amazon, for instance, and you look at the business and money section, and you use the keyword trading, you come up with 50,000 results. So that tells you how many books are published out there. So it's very difficult to differentiate what is something that is effective and is useful, and something is just very commercial. And some of these books are written to take you to a completely different, with alternative motive, to take you to their basically websites, or their courses, or to their the workshop. So something different. So that's what my criteria, as I mentioned. I want to make sure these are something that they are useful. And I've read every one of these books, and I've reread them. Some of them go back to 1840s, some of them in 1900s, and then and most of them actually in late 80s and 90s. So let me start with one common books that if you're starting trading and you like to have the totality, what books I would recommend. So the first book, and I think it's a must when I do the MBA program, I definitely recommend to my students, is the Reminiscence of the Stock Operator. And basically this book was written with Edwin Lefebvre. And he was, believe it or not, in 1909 to 1913, he was an ambassador of the United States to a few countries, including Italy. And then he comes back and he goes to Vermont and retires. And he loved writing books and a lot of biographies. And basically, this is supposed to be a fictional book, but it is said that it's the life of Jesse Livermore, which in some accounts he was the greatest trader of all time when you look at his life. And basically this book tells you the story of him, the highs and the lows of his life. So I would definitely recommend reading this book. It was published in 1923, and that's if you can find that, but they have been edited and reissued and republished. So this is one of my favorite all-time books. So that would be a must. It's not a big book. You can listen to the audio of it, but it's a very useful book in regards to sticking to your trading discipline, and also the psychology side of the human, and it is the experiences of a professional trader. The second book that I definitely recommend, this came in 1989, is The Market Wizards, which is, the Jack Schwager. He actually went and interviewed the top traders at that time, and it has a different styles of trading and different backgrounds, from the fundamental to technical, from momentum to basically trending, counter trending, the futures market and commodities, to purely stock trading. So I would definitely recommend this. This was written in 1989, but I just listened actually to it the other week, and it's still relevant today, because the human behavior and psychology does not really change. So I would definitely recommend this book. Now, what he did, Jack Schwager, he also came out in 94. He did the New Market Wizards. It was pretty good. I don't think it was as good as the first one, but if you're interested, you really enjoyed the first one, this will be a good one. And then he continued the pattern. He came with the Stock Market Wizards. He came with the Hedge Fund Market Wizards. And last year, he came up with the Unknown Market Wizards, people that they're traders like yourself, that they've been very successful, but not many people know you. In this case, this is the latest book. I've listened to all of them. I've read all of those, and it's very interesting to see how we have one market and how many different attitudes and the as far as the styles, and all of them are successful. The third type of books I would definitely recommend is with Dr. Alexander Elder. It's when it came out in 1991, I believe. Is Trading for a Living, and Dr. Elder, he was born in St. Petersburg, Russia, actually. And when he was 23, he went to medical school at age 17, believe it or not. He was 23 years old, and he got into a ship in Africa, Russian ship, and he actually was a Russian citizen, but he asked from U.S. arrived in New York and asked for political asylum, and then he became American, and he was a psychologist, and in the 80s he got very much involved in the psychology of investing, and to this day he's still doing that. He's written a few books. I really enjoyed reading this book. I would recommend that also. Basically after that he came out with the New Trading for a Living, and then there's Trading Room. He's written a few books. These are really good. The New Trading for a Living is again, it's updated because things have really changed, and since then, of course, one of his big dilemmas in the Trading for a Living was the commissions. It was a big deal for him. So really times have changed. The Trading Room is very interesting. So if you're interested in really seeing what happens in an actual trading environment, that's a really good book. There's another book he wrote, and I read it. I should reread it again. It's called Entries and Exits. And what he's done, and some of these are his students, he's gone and interviewed some of these individual traders from completely different background, from different countries. Some of them, again, emphasize an options. Some they do stocks, some they do futures and commodities, some do Forex. So he's combined. So these are kind of not professionals with large accounts. It's a combination of different capitals that they have used. And it is, again, it's very interesting with completely different backgrounds. So I would really recommend, if you have a chance, you can get it at paperback or listen, use Kindle. I don't think it's in audiobooks, but it is definitely worthwhile your time if you are interested in really seeing how the average trader started and what they're doing. This one is a little unknown. It's called Trader Vic. This is his second book. His first book was published in 1980s. Again, I think it was 1989. And it was Trader Vic, that was it. And he was a professional trader and speculator. And probably you've never heard of him, but he was very successful in the 80s and 90s. And I really liked his attitude about risk management and how he takes that. It's almost combining even the poker analysis and analogy and how he applies it. This book is, again, this is not a famous book. You probably never heard of it, but it has a lot of good points. There's sections on from the macroeconomy to options trading, and I would recommend at least take a look at it. The good thing is the source of all of these come from Amazon. You can look inside and look at some of the samples. I do have all these books, so if you're ever interested in looking at it, you're more than welcome. So this is Trader Vic 2. And again, these are more, what I'm introducing in the beginning is more of a general trading introduction. And again, these are the actual traders who've been trading. Next segment, what I like to go, I want to do more on the psychology of trading. As you know, we can learn about the strategies, and in my opinion, the technical side of things maybe it's about 20%, and we've discussed this. It's really the psychology and the money management side of things, which is what needs mastering, and which comes from mastering yourself. Now, Trading in the Zone was written by Mark Douglas. Brilliant guy. I think he's a great author, but he was one of those real traders. He started trading commodities in the 1970s, and he actually had firsthand experience. And then he was not a psychologist like Dr. Elder was. See, he was actually using his experience and then wanted to see in his surroundings what happens with the different traders, and he took that and started, in brokerage houses, started training. This Trading in the Zone is not a big book, but it goes right to the point, and I think if you read it, it's a really easy read in my opinion, but it helps you to overcome, I think, a lot of obstacles that we have as a trader. So that will be the first one of the books that I recommend. Unfortunately, Mark Douglas died a few years ago. He was very young. It was in early 60s, and it's just a shame. Had just finishing his last book. His wife has the rights to the book, and we are just hoping they will release it. And just a brilliant man. As a matter of fact, his first real book was The Disciplined Trader. While the Trading Zone is an easy read, this is a very much in-depth read. It will take you a few times reading this. It is, again, full of contents. It's not, I've chosen these because every chapter that you read, you learn something. So this is a great book, came in 1990, and I would definitely recommend if you're really interested in the psychological nature of the traders, what they do, these successful people. And it goes back actually to our belief systems. I've said it before, one of the most amazing things about trading is it's all about the reflection of us as human beings. And once you are really comfortable with who you are, that makes you an even better trader. And this is, I think, it's a wonderful book to read. The next psychology book is by Van Tharp, and he's written a few books. He just came out with a new one, but I like this one, that Trade Your Way to Financial Freedom. Again, there's a lot of psychology involved, and he still has workshops, and he's still going strong. And now he's got into digital currencies and cyber currencies and bitcoins and other things. But I would recommend Van Tharp is also a psychologist, and this book will be, I think, pretty useful. The last of our psychological books is by Brett Steinberger, and he does his PhD he's actually a psychologist, and he's in New York, and he works with a lot of institutional trading. And again, maybe someone you haven't heard. He really has a lot of great free um, uh, blogs and articles that you would like. I really like this 101 lessons. It goes right to the point. It's like 2 pages of lessons. I really enjoyed it, and this is something that you might want to, take a look at it. Again, every book that I'm suggesting, I do have them. So if you ever want to share that, but it's really fun read. Um, Now we go back to the sentiment and the human psychology you can see over millennials and decades and centuries. And this is, again, I think it's a must reading if you're looking at the whole world as interaction of the human psychology. This book was written in 1841 by Charles Mackay, and it's called Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. It talks about how these bubbles happen. I mean, this is something that is interesting. As a human being, we do not learn from history, and we keep repeating it as if it's going to be different this time. So if you like to read this, this is the latest one came out in 2021, but actually the first book was published in 1841. The one I have is, I think, from 1936 or something, but it is a very interesting book if you like the sentiment side of things and the human behavior. Um, as you know, I'm very big in intermarkets. I'm talking about the relationship between the different asset classes and how they impact each other. And John Murphy in 1980s and 1990s, he was a guru on technical analysis. And if you ever watch FNN, and then it changed its name to CNBC, for instance, he was a guest speaker. He has presence in stockcharts.com. Really, he was the authority on technical analysis, and he was the first really the real person who looked at the intermarket technical analysis. It was looking at the relationship of the different asset classes. So his first book was Intermarket Technical Analysis, which I have. It's in 1991. And then he kind of updated it, and he came up with Intermarket Analysis, came out in 2004. So if you're interested in seeing how their interactions of the different asset classes, I would recommend this book. Again, you can look at Amazon, look inside, see what your thoughts are, and I'll be happy again to share with you what I have. The last but not least, I think this is it's a fascinating book. It's a very long book. I don't know, it has about 900 pages. I don't see it here, but it's a big book. And this is on behavior finance. And this is good not only for trading, but it really goes deep. It's very good in portfolio management. It goes to the institutional side of things as a portfolio manager, as an individual investor, and really looks at how the behavior of finance affects our decision making. So it's a more of an academic side of things, but still, I believe it's enjoyable. And this is something that I believe it should be in anybody's library. I've read it, but I've enjoyed it even more listening to it again, because it is a pretty long book. So these are really the books. I don't want to throw tons of books. We could do maybe another session on investing books. I just want to focus on the trading side of things, especially we do a lot of short-term trading if you're interested. But I thought to share things that I've really enjoyed. And these are the books, as I mentioned, something that I would reread. And the value of the book is when you want to come back. And it's not one of those books that, let's say, when you read it on the plane, you'd like to leave it on the plane or just give it to somebody else. These are the books for keeps, and that's what I've really wanted to share with you on these books. Since my first book was about Jesse Livermore, so I thought maybe share a little bit more about Jesse Livermore, about his life and some of his lessons and sayings and what he does, because I really think of all these books, I would definitely read the Reminiscence of a Stock Trader, and then there was a Stock Operator, was another book came out. So uh, basically, the reason he is, and he's very much followed, is because he ended up, he started, in 1907. He was doing, there used to be the buckets, and he would go around in New York and New Jersey, and he was the bucket shops, and he would sit there and watch, and he eventually ended up making over $100 million, which is about 1.5 billion, and this is in trading. So it started really short-term trading, and eventually it became a swing trader, more of a longer term. And again, he was using his own funds and never managed any money for others. And he had a big win in 1929 crash. The thing is, he was a trend-following trader. He was, look at the patterns and the volume. And the sad thing about him was, he made fortune and lost fortunes, and made fortunes and lost fortunes, I think 3 times. And he ended up, I believe, committing suicide. So it was not, he was broke, and he really didn't end well for him. He was married, I believe, a few times. Personal life was not the greatest. But it's just really fascinating to follow his life. Some of the trading rules that he actually applied, and you can read it with me, and it's something that you can have a copy of it. It was, there's a trend following and counter trend. Even though we can be counter trend, which like I am, I look at the extremes. Even once we are counter trend, we end up becoming a trend following, in a sense that once we get in, usually there is a trend. So a lot of times there's a differentiation is, oh, he's a trend follower. Well, a lot of our art, it just depends when you get in to that position. So he would get in, and he would do it in the bull market, and he made a lot of money shorting the markets. That was his success. So he does it in the bear market. And again, this is things we've talked about trading. You want to make sure you are seeing things clearly. Never put the things into chance. Even if you've succeeded in that in the past, it has worked out. You really have to see the clear opportunities, and you have to be very much, at least probability-wise, make sure it's all in your favor. Again, we use the pivot point. He used the pivot points. Remember, those times there was not charting or anything. He would observe. He would look at later. He would look at the tickers and see what is happening. And then with the bucket shops, he would sit there and watch them. And then again, he's wait for the market to confirm the opinion before entering. So if you have this hypothesis, make sure that we have this fear of missing out, and make sure you avoid that. It is nothing like it's confirmation. We talk about 2-bar confirmations. This is the same thing. So he was a big believer in the patience, and for him, it was very important. He said most of the money that he made was when he didn't make it. In a sense, he was on the sidelines. So that's a big thing. Let profit run. These are like old saying. You've heard it, but imagine this is going back over 100 years ago. And close the trades, they show loss. We talk about, again, cover your losses, trade with stop. And we've always talked about, you want to have a clear mind when you enter the market. You know what your profit targets are. You know what your stop losses are. Extra trades that, where the prospect of further profits is remote. So you cannot squeeze everything out of things, of the profits. Trade the leading stocks in each sector. Again, the strength, we look at the relative strength. Don't average down, which is very tempting, because as we are losing, we are hoping that we can make up for that loss by buying. And if there's no confirmation, you don't want to do that. Don't meet a margin call, which is coming. We talked about a couple of weeks ago. Close the position instead, and don't follow too many stocks. So you want to have control of your positions. One of the things, an interesting story about Jesse, and that has been one of my passions, as you know. Isn't that wonderful if you start understanding these when you're a teenager? And a lot of, again, successful investors have started when they're in their teens, or at least had the passion. And here he started at age 14. His first profit was $3.12, which was a big time at that time. And then at age 5, that had happened. And then he made $1,000 later at age 15. Not 5, age 15. At age 20, he made $10,000. And, you know, he was born, I think, 1871 or so. So you can see, you know, going back, how far you go back, and that's how much money he made. And then he kept making money and losing money. And again, this 1929 crash made him huge fortune. These are the two lessons I want to share, and ended with that the rules for trading were not fully formulated. This is the mistakes that he made, and he accepted that he lost money when he didn't do these two culprits, and he didn't abide by his rules. These are the two culprits again. The rules for trading were not fully understood, formulated, and the rules were not followed. And you hear this over and over. The discipline. You talk about journal, and I thought that's very timely. So with that in mind, I hope this was useful. I hope some of these books, you probably have read some of these books. If you haven't read all of them, you know, try to take a look at them and see if some of them might be beneficial to your character and your personalities. And again, I thank you very much for your attention, and I can open up for the questions and answers.